consumer discretionary shares also lifted the market, with the stock of Gap Inc., GPS.N up 3.3% at $40.52 after the apparel retailer reported upbeat April sales and gave a profit forecast that surpassed Wall Street's expectations. The S&P Consumer Discretionary Index, SPLRCD, was up 0.6%. And Apple Inc. AAPL.O was the biggest drag on both the benchmark S&P 500 index and the Nasdaq 100. NTX on news that it is close to paying a record $3.20 billion for Beats Electronics, an expensive foray into music streaming and headphone gear, two people with knowledge of the matter said. And some analysts questioned whether Beats, valued at $1 billion during its last funding round in September, was worth that price. Apple shares fell 0.4% to $585.54. And momentum names advanced, with shares of Gilead Sciences Inc., GILD.O, up 1.3% at $79.76. Netflix Inc., NFLX.O, shares rose 2.1% to $328.55 after the company increased the price of its most popular video streaming plan by $1 a month. And the gains came after a volatile week for those shares. The S&P 500 has alternated between gains and losses each day this week, and the Nasdaq has dropped for 3 straight sessions, its longest losing streak since early April, as internet-related stocks came under pressure. And trading was mostly lackluster, with about 5.7 billion shares changing hands on the U.S. exchanges, below the 6.2 billion month-to-date average, according to data from BATS Global Markets. And the volatility and the decline in a lot of growth stuff is wearing people out, said Michael James, managing director of equity trading at Wedbush Securities in Los Angeles. There's a lot of trader fatigue. And the Dow Jones Industrial Average, G, rose 32.37 points or 0.2% to 16,583.34, the S&P 500. SPX gained 2.85 points or 0.15% to 1,878.48 and the Nasdaq Composite. XSEC added 20.374 points or 0.5% to 4,071.869. And shares of International Business Machines Corporation, IBM.N, rose 0.6% to $190.08 and helped lift the Dow to a record close. And for a week the Dow rose 0.4%, while the S&P 500 dipped 0.1% and the Nasdaq fell 1.3%. This marked the Nasdaq's biggest weekly percentage decline in a month. And the Russell 2000 toy gained 0.9%. Early in the session, it flirted with correction territory, defined as a 10% drop from the recent peak. At its session low, the Russell touched 1,091.50, nearly 10% below its all-time closing high of 1,208.65 reached on March 4. And healthcare stocks rose, with shares of Merck MRK.N up 0.7% at $55.21 a day after U.S. health regulators approved a blood clot prevention drug developed by Merck for use by patients who have had a heart attack or who suffer from blockages in the arteries of the legs. The S&P Healthcare Index, SPXHC, was up 0.6%. And among the day's big decliners, Rocket Fuel Inc., Fuel.O, shares tumbled 21.5% to $21.83 after the technology provider for web-based video advertising forecast current quarter revenue far below expectations, prompting downgrades from Goldman Sachs and Mo Capital. And advancers outnumbered decliners on the New York Stock Exchange by a ratio of about 17 to 13, while on the Nasdaq, nearly 17 stocks rose for every 9 that fell. And editing by Bernadette Baum, Nick Zieminski and Jan Paschal. And back to top. And Thomson Reuters is the world's largest international multimedia news agency, providing investing news, world news, business news, technology news, headline news, small business news, news alerts, personal finance, stock market, and mutual funds information available on Reuters.com, video, mobile, and interactive television platforms. Thomson Reuters journalists are subject to an editorial handbook which requires fair presentation and disclosure of relevant interests. NYSE and Amex quotes delayed by at least 20 minutes. Nasdaq delayed by at least 15 minutes. For a complete list of exchanges and delays, please click here.